You know what the #1 job of somebody that sold their soul in Hollywood is? Is to act like it didn't happen.
Def Comedy Jam 25. It's good to see so many funny people together in one room, all wondering the same thing. Is Cat Williams gonna show up?
I'm nervous as hell right now.
Or take the praise for what it is, or understand that, okay, if I do this, it's gonna be more trouble than it's worth.
That's right.
You know, so a moment of
Samuel Jackson. We was in Portofino, we had finished dinner one time. We walking back to go get on this boat. Hey, you're Samuel Jackson, I want to take a picture.
Celebrated actor Samuel L. Jackson has purportedly made some startling revelations, which have gotten the grapevine buzzing with excitement. The 75-year-old actor reportedly spoke to his fans during a live Q&A, where he divulged some juicy info about Steve Harvey and Cat Williams. Fans knew there was tension between Steve Harvey and Cat Williams following Cat's interview on Club Shay Shay, but Jackson's words added different levels of intricacies between the two veteran comedians that fans never knew. What did Samuel L. Jackson say? And how would it affect the already fragile relationship between two of the finest stand-up comedians in the business? Stay with me as we dissect Jackson's words and what they tell us about Cat Williams and Steve Harvey.
He stopped stand-up because he got in a comedy battle called the Championship of Stand-Up Comedy with one Cat Williams in Detroit in front of 10,000 people and lost.
Currently, there's no feud that is funnier and simultaneously more bitter than the Cat Williams-Steve Harvey fallout. The two industry veterans have been at each other's throats since Cat's famous or infamous interview, depending on which side you're on, with Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay. Fans who took the trouble to score points based on the impact of the words the comedians have used against each other claim that Cat is in a comfortable lead. However, Steve Harvey isn't far off either, having delivered sharp and acidic salvos of his own. Now, you'd be forgiven to think that the squabble between these two comedians started after the Club Shay Shay interview, but Samuel L. Jackson apparently thinks otherwise. The streets claim that Samuel L. Jackson revealed the Cat Williams-Steve Harvey began way back in time, but became more apparent at the 2017 Def Comedy Jam. Homing in on the specific incident, the Pulp Fiction star highlighted the segment when Dave Chappelle gave Cat Williams props. Everyone, both comedians and audience, laughed, with Cat Williams joining in the fray by breaking into smiles. But Steve Harvey was apparently visibly distraught and tensed, probably envious, as all attention shifted to Cat Williams for a second. The game show host then passed a comment that was seemingly geared at bringing the spotlight onto himself by saying, I'm nervous as hell right now." However, Dave Chappelle wouldn't be swayed as he continued to talk about Cat Williams, redirecting everyone's attention to the talented comedian. Realizing that his plan wasn't working, Steve Harvey chimed in, "But let me ask you this. When have you ever seen this many heavy hitters all together at the same time in the same room?" Once again, taking the attention from Cat Williams. Now, fans might not have noticed what Steve Harvey did there, but industry insiders knew exactly what the TV show host did, and many, including Samuel L. Jackson, expressed their disappointment. They thought that moment belonged to Cat Williams, and though he wasn't on stage or part of the lineup, he still deserved the spotlight. They believed the veteran comedian had paid his dues in the comedy industry and deserved his flowers at one of the biggest comedy stages in the country. Thus, for Steve to cut in and try to take attention from him was a low blow in their opinion. They suggested that the game show and talk show host could have waited for a while and probably added a sentence or two about Cat Williams' legacy before switching focus. But no, not Steve Harvey. He must steal the spotlight from his eternal rival, and he did. The insiders allegedly argued that Harvey could have even done the stealing with style and panache, but his sudden shifting focus was rough and smacked of envy. Aside from Steve Harvey, another notable person who innocuously tried to steal the spotlight was Cedric the Entertainer. Now, according to eagle-eyed fans, Cedric's style was more subtle and than Harvey's. So many people might not have noticed it. During Dave Chappelle's brief monologue on Cat Williams, Cedric was nervously laughing as if he couldn't wait for it to be over. But once Steve Harvey chimed in for the second time, Cedric co-signed his words with "yeah," as if to say, "It's about time forget Cat and get on with business."
Well, let me ask you this. When have you ever seen this many heavy hitters all together at the same time, in the same room?
Though Cedric's style was more subtle and almost unnoticeable, many industry insiders were reportedly not happy with it. They thought that he could at least continue pretending to be happy for their colleague who wasn't with them on stage. Remember, this was 2017, 7 years before Cat Williams openly called out both Harvey and Cedric on Club Shay Shay. So, fans began to wonder exactly why Steve Harvey and Cedric the Entertainer would treat Cat Williams the way they did. Well, the answer, according to the streets, lay with Samuel L. Jackson. The veteran actor reportedly explained that both Cedric and Harvey were terrified of Cat Williams, hence their actions on the night. They weren't terrified because he was going to beat them up or shred them to pieces, but they were terrified because he was going to steal the spotlight. If you rewind the video a few seconds back, you'll realize that Steve Harvey's first attempt at taking the spotlight from Cat Williams has him saying the following words, "S, I'm terrified."
Is Cat Williams gonna show up? I'm nervous as hell.
According to reports, Jackson pointed out that aside from Steve Harvey's diversionary tactics, he was genuinely afraid of Cat Williams. He allegedly explained that the main reason Steve Harvey and Cedric the Entertainer are afraid of Cat is that he's a better comedian than they are. Cat himself alluded to this when he tore All Too Apart during his interview with Shannon Sharpe. He explained that there was once a comedy battle between him and Steve Harvey earlier in their careers, in which he completely annihilated the talk show host. It was the 2008 Championship of Comedy, where the two comedians were billed to perform. To be fair, the show wasn't billed as a face-off between the two comedians. However, Cat was apparently tired of Steve's shenanigans and wanted to prove a point, so he seemingly goaded the talk show host into a face-off. He then went on making personal jokes about Steve, claiming that the game show host was actually bald and had a man's wig on. At the time, not many people knew that Steve Harvey was hairless because he always wore a high-top fade haircut on all of his television appearances. In fact, to say that many young men envied Steve's hair is an understatement. His hairline was the envy of the town, especially young men whose hairlines were receding faster than the speed of light. Many praised his haircut and ranked him among some of the fine-looking black dudes in Hollywood. Probably, his haircut gave him some sort of confidence, as heads turned his way whenever he walked by. Thus, it was a big blow when Cat Williams kept making jokes about his prized possession. Probably Cat Williams' words about his hairless head created a huge dent in his confidence and self-esteem. For now, we can't tell exactly how Steve felt about the whole incident, but one thing was for sure. Steve eventually dropped the wig and went with a clean shave, proving Cat Williams right. Today, the celebrated TV talk show host struts around with a cleanly shaved head that perfectly matches his well-trimmed mustache. Before then, he hid his real identity behind a wig. Cat Williams claimed that his words broke Steve Harvey so much that he stopped doing stand-up comedy because he couldn't just get his act together and face his audience. If Cat's words are anything to go by, then that perfectly explains why Steve Harvey would be afraid of the veteran comedian. It makes sense why Samuel L. Jackson would purportedly claim that Steve Harvey gets tensed whenever Cat Williams is around. And who wouldn't? I mean, if the one who is responsible for ending your stand-up career walks into the same room as you, you'll be nervous. It explains why Steve Harvey would claim he was nervous when Dave Chappelle made a joke about Cat Williams 9 years later at the 2017 Def Comedy Jam 25. Now, the reason why Cedric the Entertainer appeared nervous and couldn't wait for the spotlight to shift from Cat Williams at the 2017 Def Jam Comedy is a bit subtle and complex, so let me break it down. In fact, many fans didn't know there was a feud between Cedric the Entertainer and Cat Williams until the interview of the year on Club Shay Shay. Explaining the genesis of his issues with Cedric, Cat explained that the comedian stole his jokes despite several warnings. He claimed the joke in question was the best joke that he had done on BET's Comic View in 1998. The TV network loved the joke so much that they included it in their commercial for the following season. He thought that I was just a no-name comedian and that he could take this joke and nobody would know, Williams said on the Club Shay Shay. The issue was that I had already done this particular joke on BET's Comic View twice. It had done so well on BET's Comic View that they made it part of the commercial. Cat explained that Cedric, the Entertainer, came to watch him perform the joke at the Comedy Store, and he loved it. Once the show was over, Cedric walked up to him backstage and congratulated him on an awesome performance, telling him how he loved the joke, only to steal it and use it in his material. "This is not just a random joke. This is my very best joke, and it's my last joke, and it's my closing joke," Williams continued. 1998, I'm doing this joke. It's on Comic View. Cedric comes to the Comedy Store. He watches me in the audience. he comes backstage. He tells me what a great job I did and how much he loves the joke. 2 years later, he's doing that as his last joke on the Kings of Comedy. And he's doing it verbatim. He's just changed my car into a spaceship. Cat Williams didn't stop there. He went after Cedric's looks, calling him a walrus with no talent. We found out he can't sing, can't dance, and doesn't write jokes. He did 4 comedy specials. They're so bad, Shannon. They're not available on Netflix or Tubi. Of course, these words might seem harsh, and they are, but if you consider the accusations that the veteran comedian has leveled against Cedric and Steve Harvey, you might think he's justified. Cat has accused the 2 comedians, along with Ricky Smiley, of conspiring against the late Bernie Mac. He claimed that they pretended they loved him but hated the Bernie in their hearts and worked against him. He accused Steve Harvey of being jealous of Bernie's acting skills because no studio wanted to work with him. This the same guy that hated on Bernie Mac with the same thing. There are 30,000 new scripts in Hollywood every year. Not one of them asks for a country bumpkin black dude that can't talk good and look like Mr. Potato Head. There ain't none. You have to have range. Cat thought that Steve Harvey and his ilk did their best to sabotage Bernie Mac's career, but things didn't go as planned. According to him, Steve and the rest of the Kings of Comedy cast decided to place Bernie as the opening act and make Steve Harvey go last because they thought he was the funniest. However, during editing of the footage, the producers shifted Bernie Mac's performance to the last because his was the funniest. Now, all these might sound absurd, which it did at the time, until DJ Ed Lover corroborated Cat Williams' story, claiming that the late Bernie Mac told him exactly the same thing. Lover, who was a close friend of Bernie Mac up until his passing, recalled the late comedian personally informing him of Harvey's alleged underhanded tactics. The stuff that Cat Williams said about Steve Harvey calling to try to get Bernie's role on Ocean's 11 and that kind of stuff, Bernie told me out of his own mouth, the New York native said. I believe Bernie Mac when he said Steve Harvey hated on him. So you see how all these scenarios kind of paint a perfect picture of what Samuel L. Jackson was trying to draw? These men appear to have formed a cabal and basically trample on other comedians who don't roll with them and steal their jokes. They also move heaven and earth to keep the spotlight on themselves, even if it means calling movie production companies for roles that belong to other comedians. Most of their victims prefer to keep quiet and keep things going, as in the case of Bernie Mac, who knew what they were doing but preferred to focus on his work. However, outspoken comedians such as Cat Williams can't keep their mouths shut whenever they see some perceived injustices in the industry and will bring the truth to light. This is probably why Steve Harvey and his ilk may be terrified of him. Interestingly, Cat Williams isn't the only comedian to have called Steve Harvey out on how he treated other comic acts. Veteran comedian Mark Curry has also expressed his disappointment in Steve Harvey for stealing his jokes and using it in his comedy routine. Explaining how he found out, Mark Curry claimed he was in the house when he got a phone call from a friend asking him to switch on the TV and tune in to one network. When he did, he discovered Steve Harvey performing one of his favorite jokes from way back. According to him, he performed the joke in 1999 during his own stand-up special produced by Comedy Central Presents. However, Steve denied any wrongdoing, challenging Mark Curry to come forward with evidence of him stealing his jokes. He added, "The only reason I'm commenting is because he keeps running his mouth about now grow up. Never stole a joke in 35 years. Come to me like a man and tell me what the joke is." Well, fans of the veteran comedian dug up the joke Mark Curry was referring to and proved that Steve really did steal Curry's joke. The routine was a Halloween joke in which Mark claimed that they didn't have money while growing up and had to use some strange but funny costumes for All Hallows Eve. Steve apparently performed the same joke on his eponymous talk show, Little Big Shots, where he was brought up in a family with no money and had to dress up in funny Halloween costumes. In an interview with Willie D on his podcast Willie D Live, Curry stated that Steve's motivation for stealing his jokes wasn't financial gain, but the desire to be like him, Mark Curry. At first, he did not address the Think Like a Man author by his name and spoke about how many comedians are swiping jokes in his industry. Comparing it to what happens in the rap industry, Curry claimed that the content is similar, but many things clearly distinguish one artist from the other. However, stand-up comics are different, and when people steal, it places people in a position where they have to either defend their originality or comfort the person who stole their material. Thus, he sent a warning to Steve Harvey. "I'm a step to you. If you stealing my set, F you," he said. "I step to you. That doesn't mean it has to be a physical thing." He then told Willie D he takes pride in writing his own jokes and tries to write on topics that are different from what other comedians are writing on. This helps him to detect when comedians steal his routine because those jokes are unique and ain't like any other. And that was how he spotted the parts of his jokes that Steve Harvey stole. Take the Steve Harvey thing. It's a B move. Curry said. Maybe he's not stealing my material, you know? I maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe one of his writers did it. But they know, we all know, whose material it is. It ain't about the money, he said. Harvey got enough money, so it looked like you want some of me. You want to be me. Therefore, you ain't got enough money. I look at it like that's all right, boy. I'm a G in the game. You want to be me. You want my style. However, Steve Harvey shot back at Mark Curry, telling the veteran comedian to grow up and stop making stuff up. He claimed that he stopped doing stand-up a long time ago, so he doesn't even know what the old G was talking about. Mark Curry needs to grow up, Harvey said at the time. Steve Harvey ain't been on stage since 2015. He doesn't know what